stranger than the truth. The sergeant agreed, but without enthusiasm. In his experience, it was the ordinary and obvious thing that happened. He didn't believe in coincidences. After all, it wasn't such a coincidence that a fisherman who lowered a line on the site of the crate should catch his hooks in it. The crate was in the area over which this man fished. There was nothing wonderful about it. But a further discussion of the point was prevented by their arrival at the police station. They passed to the outhouse containing the body, and French forthwith began his examination. The remains were those of a man slightly over medium height, of fairly strong build, and who had seemingly been in good health before death. The face had been terribly mishandled. It was battered in until the features were entirely obliterated. The ears, even, were torn and bruised and shapeless. The skull was evidently broken at the forehead, so as the sergeant had said, there was here an injury amply sufficient to account for death. It was evident also that a post-mortem had been made, although French had seldom seen so horrible a spectacle. But his professional instincts were gratified by a discovery which he hoped might assist in the identification of the remains. On the back of the left arm, near the shoulder, was a small birthmark of a distinctive triangular shape. Of this he made a dimensioned sketch, having first carefully examined it and assured himself it was genuine. But beyond these general observations, he did not spend much time over the body. Having noted that the fingers were too much decomposed to enable prints to be taken, he turned his attention to the clothes, believing that all the further available information as to the remains would be contained in the medical report. Minutely he examined the underclothes, noting their size and quality and pattern, searching for laundry marks or initials or for mendings or darns. But except that the toe of the left sock had been darned with wool of too light a shade, there was nothing to distinguish the garments from others of the same kind. Though he did not expect to get help from the clothes, French, in his systematic way, entered a detailed description of them in his notebook. Then he turned to the crate. It measured 2 feet 3 inches by 2 feet 4 and was 3 feet long. Made of spruce an inch thick, it was strongly put together and clamped with iron corner pieces. The boards were tongued and grooved, and French thought that under ordinary conditions it should be watertight. He examined its whole surface, but here again he had no luck. Although there were a few bloodstains inside, no label or brand or identifying mark showed anywhere. Moreover, there was nothing in its shape or size to call for comment. The murderer might have obtained it from 100 sources, and French did not see any way in which it could be traced. That it had been labelled at one time was evident. The heads of 8 tacks formed a parallelogram which clearly represented the position of a card. It also appeared to have borne attachments of some heavier type, as there were 7 nail holes of about 1/8 of an inch in diameter at each of 2 opposite corners. Whatever these fittings were, they had been removed and the nails withdrawn. "How long would you say this had been in the water?" French asked, running his fingers over the sodden wood. "I asked Manners, our coastguard, that question," the sergeant answered. "He said not very long. You see, there are no shells nor seaweed attaching to it. He thought about the time the doctors mentioned, say between 5 and 6 weeks. The bar was a bit of old 2-inch shafting some 14 inches long, and was much rusted from its immersion. It had evidently been put in as a weight to ensure the sinking of the crate. Unfortunately, it offered no better clue to the sender than the crate itself. French added these points to his notes, and again addressed the sergeant. "Have you a good photographer in the town?" "Why, yes, pretty good." "Then I wish you'd send for him. I want some photographs of the body, and they had better be done first thing in the morning." When the photographer had arrived and had received his instructions, French went on. "That, Sergeant, seems to be all we can do now. It's too dark to walk around tonight. Suppose we get along to the hotel and see about that dinner." During a leisurely meal in the private room French had engaged, they conversed on general topics, but later, over a couple of cigars, they resumed their discussion of